Okay, shalom. All praises to the Most High, the Heavenly Father, through His Son, the Anointed Savior. We come together once again to bring out another empowering message. Through the Spirit of the Most High, may the eyes and ears of all the viewers be opened. So what today we're going to touch on is the sequel to the trap of Paul's epistles. The Most High, through the Spirit of the Most High, it was revealed on how we have to be cautious when we're dealing with Paul's epistles. Because a lot of those letters and a lot of those verses and scriptures inside of his epistles can be taken the wrong way to promote wickedness. So that's what that video was to show you, that how you have to be wary of how you interpret those letters. But of course, there's always people out there that are more subtle than any beast of the field, and they're always trying to catch more people and bring them to the wickedness or to the dark side. So with this video, we're going to put an end to all misunderstanding regarding the epistles of Paul, because you're going to find out in this video that you have to make a choice. There's going to be no more room for open discussion once we finish this video. There's no more open discussion after we do this. You're going to have to pick sides on who's lying, because you're going to find out somebody's lying. Somebody's lying, and you're going to have to pick. And whoever you pick, your decision and what you go forth and do is going to have to reflect your decision. We can't have it both ways. That's what we're going to find out. It's either Paul's lying or the Christian church is lying. The modern day Christian church, Christianity. Somebody's lying. That's what we're going to find out. So without further ado, let's get right to it. And then you're going to have to make a choice. I'm Brother Yarashalam. This is the Bible Unlocked. Paul versus Christianity. Somebody's lying. Acts 21 verse 18. And the day following, Paul went in with us unto James, and all the elders were present. And when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things God had wrought among the Gentiles by his ministry. So now the setting is we have Paul getting together with James and the elders, and he's giving them a report on how his ministry is going with the Gentiles. And he's letting them know that there's been a lot of conversions among the Gentiles. Follow me. And when they heard it, they glorified the Lord and said unto him, Thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous of the law. Now we have the elders telling Paul their report, saying, can you see how many thousands of Jews there are which believe on Christ? That's what it's referring to. And in addition to that, believing on Christ, they are all zealous of the law. Because you had to have both of them. That's what the disciples of Christ understood. I don't know about today in this modern Christianity, but according to the ones who walk with Christ, you needed to believe and be zealous of the law. You needed to keep God's commandments and believe on Christ. So now they're giving the report back to Paul. So this is what the scenario is that's going on. And they are informed of thee that thou teachest all the Jews which are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying, they ought not to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. And these Jews that believe and keep the law have been hearing these rumors about you, Paul, that you're teaching Israelites that are among the Gentiles that they don't have to keep none of the commandments. You're going to find out that this is the same accusation that the modern Christian church is saying. It's the same thing that Paul's about to go through right now in his trial that we're going to go through. People have been hearing that this brother Paul is going around teaching some Roman Catholicism, that we don't have to keep the commandments. We've been hearing, brother, that you teaching this Christianity, or this modern day Christianity, this Roman Christianity. That's basically what it's saying in a nutshell. Is that what these brothers have been hearing? What is it therefore? The multitude must needs come together, for they will hear that thou art come. The multitude is going to hear that you have come into town, and they're going to want to know what's going on. They're going to want to confront you. You're going to have a lot of people that's getting ready to come. Do therefore this that we say to thee. We have 4 men which have a vow on them. Them take and purify thyself with them. We have 4 men that have a vow on them. What is this vow? It's talking about a Nazirite vow. You read about this in Numbers, the 6th chapter, showing you that the disciples of Christ were still keeping the law after his death. I'm not sure where these people are coming up with this stuff, that as if everyone just start being lawless after Christ's death. They were still keeping the law. 4 men have a vow on them. They're telling Paul, take these men and purify thyself with them. Because you're going to read in Acts 18 verse 18, Paul already had a vow on him as well. Paul took a vow already in 3 chapters, 3 chapters prior. So they're telling Paul, you have a vow already? We have 4 other men that have a vow already. Take these men and purify thyself with them, and be at charges with them, that they may shave their heads, because part of the vow is letting your hair grow. You can't let a razor touch your head. So that's part of the law that Paul was keeping, and the other 4 men were keeping as well. So he says, take them, and the purification process, when they're getting ready to end the vow, then they shave their head to signify the purification. And it says to be at charges with them, meaning Paul is in charge of paying for these people's sacrifices. Because there's a sacrifice, as we'll keep reading, that goes along with this vow. And Paul was to be the one to pay for it. And all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning thee are nothing, but that thou thyself also walkest orderly and keepest the law. And when Paul did this, it was supposed to show the people, the multitude that's coming together to check him out and see what he's teaching. It was supposed to show them that Paul is a law keeper. And Paul's not running around teaching people you don't have to keep the law. That's what they were telling Paul to do. He said, you need to do this, brother. So these people, when they come, they say, okay, well, this must be some misunderstanding that we have. This brother's really teaching the law, teaching the commandments, and he's following the commandments. And notice that they didn't even ask him, is this true, this accusation we've been hearing? Because they knew that this wasn't true. So it was no need for them to even ask him. They just said, listen, this is what we heard, and this is what you need to do. They didn't even ask him, well, is this true that you running around wild teaching that people can be lawless since Christ died? Now, let's continue reading and see what happens. As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangled, and from fornication. So the elders say, unto the Gentiles, we told them that they didn't have to keep all the law. And then he gives the list on the things that they concluded that the Gentiles had to keep. We told them that, but the Israelites, nobody ever wrote that the Israelites or been teaching that the Israelites don't have to keep the commandments. Now let's find out what Paul says after the elders have brought this accusation up. Let's find out if Paul's going to whip out a Galatians 3 verse 24, or let's find out what he's getting ready, what his response is into this accusation being brought forth. Then Paul took the men, and the next day, purifying himself with them, entered into the temple. Wait, you telling me Paul didn't whip out a Romans 10 verse 9? All you have to do is believe? You telling me Paul didn't stand up and say, hold on. You know what, elders? I'm going to be honest with you. I am running around teaching we don't have to keep the law. And this is why. Romans 10 verse 9. You telling me Paul didn't stand up? Because this is what the Christian church is teaching, that Paul is teaching in his epistles that people can just be lawless and don't have to keep any of the commandments. Paul didn't even respond. Paul went right to it and said, and went right into, grabbed the men and went into the temple and did what the elders told him. So this is where we're going to start running into a dilemma. Because Paul didn't say anything. He didn't speak up for this. This doctrine that we don't have to keep the commandments, which he was accused of doing. And if that's what he was teaching, that's what he should have stood up and said. Let's continue, because it gets better. To signify the accomplishment of the days of purification. Until that, an offering should be offered for every one of them. See, an offering had to be offered for each one of the 4 men and Paul. This signified the end of the purification process. What was the sacrifice that needed to be made? You read about it in Numbers 6. Numbers, the 6th chapter. He needed a ewe lamb, a he lamb, a ram, a basket of unleavened bread, cakes mingled with oil, meat and drink offerings. This is what Paul was paying for when it said to be at charges with the 4 men. Paul was paying for that. And now they're getting ready to do the sacrifice. Watch. And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which were in Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people and laid hands on him. Now they caught Paul, the ones that was making these complaints, running around spreading these rumors. They said, there you go right there. That's that brother right there. Yep, I can see him. That's him. Then they stirred up all the rest of the people, and then they went and laid hands on him right before he was getting to finish the vow. So he didn't even get a chance to finish the vow because they snatched him up out of the temple, crying out, "Men of Israel, help! This is the man that teaches all men everywhere against the people. This is the man that's teaching there is neither Jew nor Greek, and that everyone's all equal and it's all one big melting pot, and that it doesn't matter who God's people are anymore." This is the guy teaching. What you're going to find out is the people accusing Paul has the same exact interpretation as the modern Christian church. That's what you're going to find out. Watch. And the law, and he's teaching people that they don't have to keep the law. He's running around here telling people that all they have to do is sit back and believe. They can be homosexuals, they can be thieves, murderers. All they got to do is believe. Don't worry about keeping that law. And this place, and further brought Greeks also into the temple, and hath polluted the holy place. And he's bringing Gentiles into the temple, Greeks, Caucasians or Europeans into the temple and profaning it. Because the custom was that the Gentiles were not allowed to come into the temple. They had to stay on the outer court. You can read about that in Revelations 11 verse 2. The outer court was for the Gentiles. The Gentiles can't come into the temple, to the inner court of the temple. So this was a major offense that they were raising against Paul. Because this offense was punishable by death. So this was not something small. These are not small accusations that they're raising against Paul. They said, this is the man that's doing this. For they had seen before with him in the city Trophimus, an Ephesian, whom they supposed that Paul had brought into the temple. Because they saw Paul in an earlier instance, a few chapters back, with an Ephesian or a Gentile, natural Gentile, Trophimus, and they supposed that he brought this Gentile into the temple. They supposed. They didn't see it. They supposed. But Paul knew better than to bring Gentiles into the inner court, because that was punishable by death. And all the city was moved, and the people ran together, and they took Paul and drew him out of the temple, and forthwith the doors were shut. And they drew Paul out of the temple, snatched him by his afro and everything, grabbed him straight up out of the temple, say, "Come on over here. You the one who's been doing this. Come on out." Now, let's continue going on further, and we're going to find out that Paul's going to get put up on trial for this indictment. And we're going to find out what Paul says about it. If these accusations are true or if they're not. Let's go. Acts chapter 24, verse 1. And after 5 days, Ananias, the high priest, descended with the elders, and with a certain orator named Tertullius, who informed the governor against Paul. So now we have Paul in front of the Roman orator, who's now telling the governor all the indictment charges against Paul and why he's being brought up on these charges. Verse 5. For we have found this man a pestilent fellow, and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the